Welcome to Late Night Story. When the world goes silent and shadows stretch longer, some stories awaken, whispered only to those still awake. So put on your headphones, turn down the lights, and let me guide you through the quiet hours. If you're listening alone, you're exactly where you need to be. If everyone can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world, don't forget to subscribe before you drift too far into the dark.
Story 1. Don't read this. I received a strange package in the mail today. It had no return address and no stamp. My wife handed it to me. She had received an identical package. We opened them and found a small book inside each. The same book. We never ordered these, but they were addressed to each of us specifically, so it can't be a mistake. The book is titled Don't Read This. The title is in bold red letters on a black cover. Nothing on the back. No author or anything. It feels kind of leathery and high quality. Probably expensive. Luckily, they wrote the instructions right in the title, so I just shoved it into a desk drawer. Anyone else get one of these? A lot of people were out sick at work today, including my friend John. Is it flu season already? The rest of the guys and I went for drinks after work, and one of them mentioned the book. He got the same one we did. Amazingly, it turned out all of the other guys got one too. This quickly became the main topic of the night. It seems like some kind of mass scale prank, or maybe some weird advertising scheme. I don't know why anyone would do this in our part of town. There's not a lot of money here. Weird. I'm not falling for it, though. Maybe later I'll sell it online. I saw the news this morning, just like everyone else. Yes, the book I've been posting about is some sort of national security threat, which is extremely hard to believe. They're telling us not to read it under any circumstances. Why? Luckily I haven't touched it, but it's apparently related to a bunch of disappearances. My boss is telling everyone to stay home today. We're too understaffed. Could this be related? I can't reach my friend John. He's not picking up. What's going on? My wife can't go to work either. So we spent the day trying to figure out what's happening. We saw the video that's been posted everywhere with that lady reading the book. In case you haven't seen it, she opened the book and started panicking almost immediately. Looking like she was about to get up, she calmed down after staring at the book for a while and went back to reading. The video sped up a bit until she got close to the end, where she started panicking again. When she flipped to the last page, she started screaming. It made me jump with how loudly she screamed. It seemed almost fake, but the terror on her face was disturbing as hell. She suddenly disappears afterward, which again seems pretty fake. I got laughed at by my wife when I jumped. She must enjoy these kinds of things because I didn't think it was funny at all. She joked about my reaction and tried to get me to laugh at the bad acting, but I just couldn't get over the look on that lady's face. My wife asked if we should just read the book and get it over with. I told her that was an absolutely terrible idea, at least until we know more. I really don't want to take any risks. Has anyone here actually read the book? I'm getting spooked after watching that video. This is serious now, and I need help. I woke up last night to an ear-splitting scream. My wife wasn't in bed, and I ran through the house looking for her. She's gone. I don't know where she put her book, so I don't know if she read it. I'm calling everyone to see if she went somewhere. Her car is still here. If you know where she is, please message me immediately. It's been a week since I last saw my wife. I'm losing hope. I think she must have read the book. The streets are almost empty. Nothing is normal anymore. Most of my family isn't answering calls, and I still haven't been called back to work. Not that I would go, of course. Watching the news is like watching doomsday unfold in real time. Everyone is panicking. I just want to find my wife. This doesn't seem real. If you have any information about where my wife is, please message me. I've been sitting in front of my computer for God knows how long. I can't watch the news anymore. I can't really bring myself to do much of anything. I don't know why I'm even posting these updates. All I can think about is the book. Would I die if I read it? Would I find my wife? I can't bring myself to take it out of the drawer. My wife will come back soon. I can't give up yet. Please message me if you've seen her. It's hopeless. No matter what's inside, no matter what happens, I have to read the book. I'm opening the drawer. Once again, I'm holding it. Don't read this. Stands out in red on the small, pitch-black cover. My heart is pounding. It's covered in some sort of weird leather. It feels like I'm touching cold human skin. I open it. I received a strange package in the mail today. It had no return address and no stamp. My hands shake. I start flipping through pages. This is impossible. It's my own writing. It's everything I've written since this started. Every sentence, exactly. Possibly even these words. If only I had the courage to read the last pages. Even more terrifying is that this is my handwriting. I typed this online, so how could it be my handwriting? It's too much. I can't bring myself to read more right now. I close the book and put it on my desk. Maybe after I calm down, I'll try to reach the end. I've been thinking about the book, about all the things I don't know and questions that desperately need answers. People reach the end of the book. They scream hysterically. They disappear. Why? What actually happens to them? What if someone can't read? What would be in the book? Would it be pictures? What if they're blind? Who wrote this? What is the purpose of these books? Where did it come from? How can someone deliver all these books at the same time? How could they do it without being seen? Why my wife? Why me? Why? Why? I'm praying that the answers are on the last pages. I can handle one moment of fear, if it means I might see my wife again. I can't live without knowing. It's now or never. I'm picking up the book again. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm almost paralyzed with fear right now. Even though I'm so close to getting answers, I can barely type this. My fingers are shaking over the keys. Everything up to the last entry was in the book. These words are the only ones not written on the pages. There are 3 additional sentences near the very end, something that I never typed or wrote. It's in my handwriting. 3 sentences on the second to last page. There is nothing else on it. I read the last page. I finally understand. Don't read this. I've come too far to stop now. I have to learn the truth, no matter what it is. I can't go on like this. I need to find my wife. I'm turning the page. Story 2. I watched a woman break in. She looked exactly like me. I slowly pulled into the driveway of my friend Jack. We had planned to meet up that day, but I was running a little late. I gently knocked on his front door, and he slowly opened it as he looked down at me. He was tall, but it also didn't help that I was pretty short. He stared at me as I just said something insane. Why did you come back so quickly? I thought you said you had to go back to your apartment. Now I was confused. I was late because of work. I knew I hadn't come here earlier. Are you okay, Jack? I just left work. I know I'm late, but not that late. Jack's face twisted, as if he were trying to rewind his own memories. It looked like he was genuinely trying to convince himself of what he thought he'd seen. Eventually, he forced a hesitant smile. Guess I was lonely, and I thought. I'm glad you're here, though. I already set the games up. I laughed and followed him inside. We started playing, and I beat him in almost every game. But the whole time, something felt off. He kept glancing at me like he was comparing me to something else. I don't know what made him think I'd been there earlier, but whatever he thought he saw, it must have felt real to him. Jack doesn't imagine things. Not like that. Eventually, it got late, and I had to head home. I walked up the staircase to my apartment and took out my keys. When I went to unlock the door, the slightest touch pushed it wide open. My whole body locked up. I could almost hear my parents' voices from childhood. The door is always locked when you leave. I never forgot that. Not once. With a shaky hand, I flipped on the light. At first, everything looked normal. I actually felt myself exhale and stepped inside, and that's when the rawness hit me. Everything in the apartment was moved by just a few inches, barely noticeable. Unless you knew the room as I did. I bumped my shin on the coffee table, hard, and I knew it hadn't been there earlier. I searched every inch of the apartment, every closet, under the bed, even behind the refrigerator. Nobody was there. Nothing was missing. Nothing was broken. Someone had been inside just to move things. I locked the door and curled up in my blankets, trying to calm down with cat videos. But I didn't sleep at all. At daybreak, I grabbed my wallet and drove to the nearest store. I bought as many cheap cameras as I could afford and set them up in every corner of the room, even above the front door. It should have helped. It didn't. I still didn't feel safe. So I spent what money I had left renting a cheap hotel room for the night. I checked in, locked the door 3 times, crawled into bed, and opened the cameras on my phone. Hours passed. Nothing happened. Then my apartment door handle twitched. Slowly, then turned. The door eased open and a woman stepped inside, short brown hair, a jacket a size too big for her. I switched to another camera angle to see her face. My blood ran cold. She had my face, or something wearing my face. Every detail. Even the way she carried her shoulders, the way she scanned a room. It was me. Then she turned directly toward one of the cameras and waved. Her mouth moved slowly, like she wanted to take my time reading it. I can see where you are. My hand shook so badly I dropped my phone onto the bed and yanked the blanket up over me. I just need sleep, I told myself. If I sleep, I'll stop freaking out. It'll make sense tomorrow. I lowered the blanket, just enough to grab my phone again. My breathing was shaking so hard I could hear it. She wasn't on the cameras anymore. Not on any of them. Then I heard the tapping on the hotel window. Soft, rhythmic, exactly how I tap when I'm distracted. Let me in, Susie. I've been looking for you for so long. I couldn't see her through the blinds, but I felt her presence. I covered my mouth and breathed as quietly as I could, pretending you can't hear me, Susie. That's mean. I thought we could meet each other properly, maybe even help each other, the way you wish you could have helped your sister. My stomach twisted. Nobody knew about that. I'd never told Jack, never told anyone. Only my parents knew about the accident, and they never talked about it. H, how do you know about her? My voice came out small and shaking. Soft giggling came from behind the blinds. I know because you know Susie. I know how much you loved her, and I know how much it hurts. The tapping sped up, sharp enough to feel like it was drilling into my skull. It wasn't your fault, she continued, almost gently. But you never stopped thinking it was, did you? I didn't mean... My voice cracked, and I pressed my fist against my mouth. The tapping stopped. Silence. Then, a slam. I spun toward the hotel door, just in time to see it swing inward. She stood in the doorway, me, but smiling too wide, like her face didn't know how to be human. She rushed at me, grabbed a handful of my hair, and slammed my head backward against the wall. Pain exploded across my skull, and hot blood slid down the side of my face. I screamed and swung blindly, hitting her ribs hard enough to knock her over. I fell on top of her and scratched at her face. I saw a smear of red appear beneath her left eye, and she shrieked and thrashed. She grabbed my wrist and bit down. I tried to pull away, but her grip was impossibly strong. She flipped me over and squeezed her hands around my throat. My nails raked at her arms, her face, anything I could reach, but the room started spinning. My vision narrowed. Everything went black. When I woke up, sunlight was leaking through the blinds. My head throbbed, and everything felt foggy. Last night came back in pieces, scattered and blurry, but real. I know it was real. There was a bite mark on my arm, and my neck still felt sore. I don't know why she stopped. I don't know why she left me alive. But I'm still me, and I'm still terrified. Story 3, urgent. 2-week pet sitting, high pay. 4 or 5 years. I've been professional pet sitter, a job that was once my passion. I'm Rover certified, insured, and I have a 5-star rating that I guard with my life. Usually, the job is simple, walk a golden retriever with separation anxiety, or care for a cat that glares at me like I'm a war criminal. The weirdest pet I handled before was a green iguana named Godzilla, who had a fondness for being hand-fed raspberries. Then, I got a message from Arthur. The subject line was deceptively ordinary. Urgent. 2-week pet sitting, high pay. The house was a sleek, modern glass box overlooking the ocean. The duration was 14 days. But when I replied asking about the animal, the response made me physically recoil. They are a colony of Madagascar hissing cockroaches. About 50 of them. They are low maintenance. I need someone to ensure humidity levels are kept stable. My finger hovered over the delete button. Hell no, I don't do bugs. I barely do spiders. Then the follow-up message came through. Compensation is $10,000 up front. I stared at the screen. My student loans were drowning me, and my car was making a noise that sounded like a dying seal. 10 grand for watching bugs in a glass box? I couldn't turn that down. I showed up at the house the next day. It was sterile, smelling faintly of bleach and lemon. Arthur opened the door, and the first thing I noticed was his eyes. They were violent, bloodshot red, sunken deep into dark purple sockets. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in a month. He scratched the back of his neck furiously, his fingernails digging into raw, red skin. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice raspy. He winced, gritted his teeth, and offered me a trembling hand. He led me to the living room. On the coffee table sat a massive, heavy-duty glass terrarium. Inside, a dark, shifting mound of black and brown carapaces moved sluggishly. There weren't too many of them, maybe 40 or 50 large ones. Humidity at 80%. "I have fresh vegetables and oats set aside for them," Arthur said, rushing through the instructions as if he were holding his breath. He handed me a heavy brass key. "Feed them every hour. Make sure to. And never leave them alone," he said before clenching teeth as his nails dug into his hand. He let out a long, shuddering sigh of relief. "Take good care of them." And then, he practically ran out the door. I locked it behind him and turned to the tank. I leaned in close. They were grotesque, their armored backs shining under the heat lamp. I checked the lid. It was heavy mesh with industrial clamps. It was shut tight. I crouched down and pulled open the cabinet doors beneath the tank stand. The shelves were stacked with gallon-sized Ziploc bags, each one stuffed with freshly chopped kale. Next to them were various frantic hand-written notes. I grabbed the nearest bag and popped it open. "Easy money," I whispered to myself. I fed the roaches a handful of kale. My face wrenched at them as they fed. They scuttled over one another, hissing and snapping, fighting for the chunks of green. I glanced at Arthur's scribbled notes. "Feed every hour." That sounded like overkill. A quick Google search confirmed that most of these colonies only needed food a few times a week. "You guys can wait," I muttered. I wasn't about to be a butler to a box of bugs. I finished up and headed to the guest bedroom. Arthur's bed was absurdly comfortable, but the house was dead silent. Too silent. The quiet felt heavy, like it was pressing against my eardrums. I took out my phone. The blue light washed over my face as I doom-scrolled Reddit for about an hour. Eventually, my eyes grew heavy. I put my phone on the nightstand and drifted off. A few minutes later, my eyes snapped open. Scritch. Scratch. It was coming from inside the walls. At first, I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just a house settling or maybe a mouse. But it got louder. It sounded like thousands of tiny, dry legs rasping against the drywall. I sat up, heart pounding, and turned my gaze toward the noise. Instantly, it stopped. I waited. Silence. I lay back down. Scritch. The night was unnerving. As the hours dragged on, the air in the room began to thicken. A smell drifted in from the hallway. It was pungent and earthy, like wet mud mixed with something sweet and sickly, like rotting flesh. The scuffling started again, weaving in and out of my dreams. Somehow, I managed to pass out from pure exhaustion, but it wasn't a peaceful rest. I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. My head pounded. I dragged myself out of bed and walked into the kitchen to make coffee. Desperate for caffeine, while the machine brewed, I glanced at the living room. The terrarium looked darker, fuller. I frowned and walked over. The mound of bugs seemed to have doubled in volume. They were pressed against the glass, their antennae twitching frantically. Maybe they just woke up, I thought. Maybe they puff up or something. I turned back to the kitchen and froze. There was a roach on the marble countertop. It was huge, the size of my thumb. I yelped, grabbing a paper towel. I crushed it, feeling it crunch underneath my finger, and threw in the trash. My heart was hammering. I ran back to the tank. The clamps were still locked down tight. The mesh was intact. How the hell did you get out? I muttered. I reached for the bag of vegetables to feed them, but my hand stopped halfway. My stomach curdled at the sight of them. They were pressed tight against the glass, their tiny legs scrabbling against it. I couldn't open that lid. Not now. I felt like if I even cracked it an inch, they'd spill out through the mesh like an ocean. I turned away, desperately looking for a distraction. I opened the cupboard above the stove. It was nearly empty, save for a box of generic store brand flakes. It wasn't my taste, but it would do. I ripped the cardboard tab open. Dozens of small roaches were scrambling inside the box, climbing up towards the rim. I jumped in shock and reflectively hurled the box across the room. It slammed against the refrigerator, showering the floor with stale flakes. Just stale flakes. Was I going mad? The sight was still vivid in my mind. I couldn't have just imagined it. My appetite had vanished. I didn't want to be near the terrarium for the time being. I went about my day, headphones in, trying to pretend it didn't exist. But by evening, the situation had spiraled into madness. I was sitting on the couch when I heard a sound, like rain falling on dry leaves. Skitter, click, hiss. I looked down. A pool of roaches was spreading out from the base of the terrarium stand. It defied physics. There was no way that many bugs could fit in the tank, let alone squeeze through a locked lid. The black puddle grew, expanding across the white rug, moving toward my feet. Panic, cold and sharp, seized my chest. I scrambled onto the couch. This isn't real, I gasped. The floor was disappearing under a carpet of black shells. I fumbled for my phone. I needed proof. I needed to send this to Arthur or Animal Control or someone. I snapped a photo of the living room, my hand shaking so hard I almost dropped the device. I looked at the screen to check the picture. The floor was empty. In the photo, the white rug was pristine. The terrarium sat quietly on the table. There were no roaches. I looked up from the screen. They were climbing the legs of the couch. I screamed. I dropped my phone and sprinted for the bedroom. I slammed the door, then shoved a chair under the handle, and stuffed a towel into the crack at the bottom. I sat on the bed with my knees to my chest, hyperventilating. I was losing my grip on reality. I thought it could be carbon monoxide poisoning, or stress. It just couldn't be real. I curled up under the duvet, praying that if I just slept, my brain would reset. I was shaken awake by an unnerving sensation. I felt a tickle at first, then it became a light, frantic movement. On me, I threw the covers off and stood up, slapping at my arms. A roach fell from my elbow to the floor. Another fell from my hair, but the tickling didn't stop. It was deeper. I felt a flutter beneath the skin of my forearm. I stumbled into the bathroom, flicking on the harsh fluorescent lights. I looked in the mirror and screamed. My face was pale, but my eyes were beginning to turn red. I felt a sudden, violent heave in my stomach. I fell to my knees in front of the toilet and retched. It wasn't bile that came up. 3 large, wet, hissing cockroaches splashed into the toilet bowl. They began to paddle frantically in the water. My hands fell onto the sides of the toilet. I grasped for air. My throat still felt clogged. I looked down at my bare arms. Distinct oval outlines rippled through my skin, crawling through the muscle, tunneling under the epidermis, fighting for space. It felt like a fire was lit beneath my skin. I scratched viciously. My nails tore into my forearms, desperate to get them out, but that only made them burrow deeper. I rushed back to the bedroom and grabbed my phone. I dialed Arthur. It rang for a few seconds. "Hello." His voice was clear. "Well rested. You have to come back." I screamed. my voice breaking as I felt something crawl up the back of my neck, just under the hairline. I can't do this. I'm sick. Something is wrong with your pets. They're inside me. There was a pause on the line. I heard him take a deep, luxurious breath. They're yours now, he said, his voice low with ice. Click. The line went dead. I dropped the phone and raised my hands to my neck, digging my nails in and began to scratch. I drew blood, but the sensation of 1,000 tiny legs churning beneath my dermis only intensified. I fell to my knees, sobbing, my vision blurring as the room seemed to fill with the chittering sound of colony. Then, through the haze of pain, a memory snapped into focus. Arthur's raspy, frantic voice. Feed them every hour. I had ignored it. I had thought I knew better. I scrambled up from the floor, gasping for air. I rushed toward the living room, wading through the sea of black bodies that covered the floor. They crunched under my bare feet, slippery and sharp. But I ignored the revulsion. I ignored the excruciating fire in my veins. I grabbed the bag of kale from the counter and threw myself at the terrarium. The glass was vibrating. With a scream of effort, I unlatched the clamps and ripped the mesh lid open. I didn't care if they swarmed me. I didn't care if they bit. I tore the kale into jagged chunks and hurled them into the mass of writhing shells. Eat! I shrieked. Eat it! The frantic hissing stopped. The colony turned as one, descending upon the greenery with terrifying violence. As they viciously ripped the leaves to shreds, the fire under my skin began to calm. I watched as the last piece of kale disappeared beneath the swarm. I blinked. The room was silent. The floor was pristine white. The air smelled of lemon and bleach, not rot. I looked into the tank. There were no longer thousands of them, just 50 or so large, sluggish cockroaches, munching quietly on their meal. I collapsed onto the couch, watching them. My phone alarm went off exactly 59 minutes later. I got up and fed them. I stayed up the entire night, a slave to the second hand. Feed, wait, feed, wait. It worked. As long as their hunger was satiated, they stayed in the box. By the time the sun rose, casting a beautiful orange light over the ocean view I couldn't enjoy, I realized the truth. I looked at my reflection in the dark glass of the terrarium. My eyes were red. My skin was raw. I was exhausted. Is this my life now? A prisoner to a glass box? I can't live like this. I can't live in fear of the swarm returning. I need to sleep for more than 45 minutes at a time. And worse, I can't imagine what will happen if I leave them alone. I grabbed my phone. My fingers hovered over the keys for a moment, trembling before I began to type. Urgent. 2-week pet sitting, high pay. I hit post. Now I just have to wait for someone who needs the money as badly as I did. Story 4. I'm a food delivery driver, and this is my stories. I should have realized something was wrong when they offered me $30 an hour to deliver food. Now, 6 months into this hellish job, I still tell myself that. But back then, staring at my maxed out bank account and the eviction notice on my apartment door, $30 an hour felt like a godsend. The only condition was that I couldn't quit for 3 years. 3 years of guaranteed pay would have solved all my financial problems. The interview was brief. Really very brief. A woman named Cassandra sat across from me. The office smelled faintly of disinfectant, and there was another indescribable odor, something organic with a hint of decay. She didn't ask about my work experience or references. She simply pushed a contract onto the table and pointed to the signature area. The pay is very good, she said in a flat, professional tone. This job is demanding. You'll encounter some seemingly unusual situations. Follow the rules strictly, and you'll be fine. Are you okay with that? I signed. Looking back, I can't believe I signed without even reading the pay terms. On my first day at work, I arrived at the warehouse in the east of the city. It was a massive concrete building with no windows. only a steel door. The fluorescent lights inside blared, making my teeth ache. A supervisor named Marcus Bain handed me an insulated delivery bag, a company phone, and a small red booklet. "Read this," he said, tapping the booklet with his nicotine-covered fingers. "Read every word. Carry it with you at all times. Follow the instructions strictly. No improvisation. No shortcuts. No exceptions." The booklet was titled First Class Courier Delivery Procedures Manual. The cover was made of some kind of leather, unsettlingly warm to the touch, as if it had just been taken from a living creature. "This is ridiculous," I muttered, flipping to the densely packed rules, each one more outrageous than the last. Marcus grabbed my wrist. Despite the damp, stifling heat of the warehouse, his hand was icy cold. "Eric, right? I need to make this clear. This job pays so much because it's abnormal. You sign a contract. You can't quit for 3 years. So you only have 2 choices. Either follow the rules and keep your job, or ignore the rules. Well, I haven't seen anyone ignore the rules in 6 months. I don't know what happened to the last one. None of us know." Before I could respond, he released my wrist and walked away. For the next hour, I sat in my car reading the manual, my stomach tightening with each page. The company's slogan was embossed in red on the inside cover. "We deliver for any living thing." I thought it was just a marketing gimmick. I was wrong. My first order arrived at 2:47 p.m. The company phone rang and an address appeared on the screen. St. Agnes Hospital, 13th floor, room 000. I pulled up the building information. St. Agnes Hospital had been abandoned for 15 years after a patient murdered 3 nurses and a doctor before hanging himself in the pediatric ward. This hospital only has 12 floors. I opened the brochure and found a section labeled Hospital, St. Agnes. My hands trembling. The instructions were very clear. 1. Park your car on the loading dock at the back of the building. Never use the main entrance. 2. 3. Enter through the service door. The door is open. If the door is locked, leave immediately and report to the dispatch center. 4. 5. Use the stairs to go to the 2nd floor. Do not use the elevator, even if it appears to be working. 6. 7. On the 2nd floor, find room 666. Knock 13 times. Wait silently for 30 seconds. 8. 9. Find room 333. Knock 13 times. Wait silently for 30 seconds. 10. 11. Return to the stairwell. You'll find a new staircase leading upstairs that wasn't there before. Don't be surprised. Don't look back at the corridor you just left. 12. 13. Go up the staircase. It will be completely dark inside. Do not use a flashlight or your phone's light. Walk steadily upwards. You might hear breathing sounds that aren't yours. Keep going. 14. 15. You'll feel a noticeable drop in temperature. When you see your breath condense in front of you, you're almost there. 16. 17. At the end of the stairs is a door marked with the number 13. Open that door. 18. 19. Place the delivery bag on the floor inside the threshold. The floor might feel strange under your feet. Soft, warm, and slightly pulsating. This is normal. Don't investigate it. 20. 21. Put the bag down and leave immediately. Don't look into the room. If anything speaks to you, don't respond. Run down the stairs as quickly as possible. 22. 23. Once you reach the 2nd floor, the stairs behind you will disappear. Leave the building immediately. 24. I read the instructions 3 times, hoping to understand something. It still didn't work. The delivery bag contained only 1 meal, a nearly raw steak, soaking in blood. The smell made me nauseous. The St. Agnes building looked like a tombstone. The lower floors were covered in graffiti. Several windows were shattered, and shards of glass glistened in the dim afternoon light. I parked my car in the loading area as instructed, and the silence became suffocating the moment I turned off the engine. No birdsong, no traffic noise, nothing at all. The back door was unlocked as expected. The rusty hinges screeched as the door opened, echoing in the empty hallway. A stench hit me, mold, decay, and beneath it all, the smell of rotting organic matter I detected in Miss Cassandra's office. I switched on my phone's flashlight, illuminating the darkness, and found the stairwell. Peeling paint was everywhere on the walls. As I climbed to the second floor, I swear I heard footsteps moving upstairs, the sound perfectly synchronized with mine. The second floor hallway stretched endlessly in two directions. The emergency exit signs flashed a sickly yellow. I first found room 666. Its door was painted black, unmarked except for a brass number that seemed to gleam in my flashlight beam. I knocked 13 times, my knuckles echoing like gunshots in the silence. After the 13th knock, I heard something moving inside, a massive object, dragging itself across the floor with a wet, scraping sound. 30 seconds felt like 30 hours. I stared at the timer on my phone, watching the second hand tick by, while the thing behind the door continued its slow movement, drawing ever closer. When the timer showed 30 seconds, the thing suddenly stopped moving. Room 333 was at the end of the corridor. I walked towards it, only to find my footsteps no longer echoing. The sound seemed to vanish into the surrounding air, as if the hospital had swallowed all my noise. I knocked 13 times on the door of room 333. This time, the response was completely different. A child's clear, bright laughter echoed from the room. Then, another child's laughter joined in. Then a third. Soon, dozens of children's laughter came from behind the door, their voices layered, distorted, and rising in pitch until they finally merged into a piercing scream that made my ears ring. I ran back to the stairwell as instructed, following behind without looking back, even as the laughter reverberated through the corridor like a living thing. The stairwell door slammed shut behind me, and I found myself in complete darkness. My flashlight was still on. I could see the beam cutting through the air, but it illuminated nothing. The darkness swallowed the light like a black hole. Then I saw it, the new staircase leading upwards. I could see it because it was deeper than the surrounding darkness, like a negative space in the void. I put away my phone and began to climb upwards in the darkness. From what was probably the 5th floor, the sound of breathing filled the air. My breathing was slow and rhythmic, like some enormous creature drawing air into lungs that shouldn't exist. It came from all directions, from above, below, and even from inside the walls. I continued climbing, one hand gripping the railing, the other clutching the takeout bag tightly. Around the 20th step, my breath began to condense into mist. The temperature plummeted. My fingers went numb. My breathing grew louder and more rapid, as if the source of the sound sensed my approach. Something brushed against my shoulder, cold and damp, feeling like fingers made of ice water. I suppressed a scream and continued climbing. A door suddenly appeared before me, marked with the number 13 in brass, emitting a faint, sickly glow. I flung it open. The floor immediately fell off. The brochure had warned me, but the reality was completely unexpected. The floor was hot, almost feverish, vibrating slightly under my feet in rhythm with my heartbeat. The touch was like stepping on bare, untreated muscle tissue. I dropped my bag and ran, afraid to look into the room, though I glimpsed something large and pale moving in the darkness outside the threshold. As I ran down the stairs, I heard wet chewing sounds from upstairs, accompanied by groans. Groans that could be ecstasy or agony. I ran until I reached the back door and rushed into the loading area before stopping. The sun was setting, and the city was returning to its usual hustle and bustle. The phone buzzed. Delivery confirmed. $87.50 has been deposited into your account. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, trembling, before finally being able to drive away. The second order that made my impression came 3 days later. At 11:47 p.m., the phone rang. Blackstone Castle. Door-to-door delivery. I opened the brochure with trembling hands and found the relevant section. 1. Head to the warehouse stables. Yes, we have horses. Choose the gray mare named Patience. She knows the way. 2. 3. Load the goods into the saddlebags. The castle cannot be reached by car. You must ride a horse. 4. 5. Follow the path behind the warehouse. It will lead you through the woods. The entire journey will take approximately 40 minutes. Do not stray from the path. 6, 7. You may see figures in the woods. They will call to you, and sometimes you will recognize their voices. Do not respond. Do not look directly at them. Pay attention to Patience's ears. 8, 9. The castle gates will open. Ride through the gates into the courtyard. 10, 11. The well is located in the center of the courtyard. Dismount, but do not tether Patience. She will wait for you. 12, 13. Approach the well. You will hear various sounds coming from it. Voices, music, and laughter. These are echoes of the castle's history. They are harmless. 14, 15. Throw the delivery bags into the well. You will not hear the bags hitting the bottom. This is normal. 16, 17. There will be a response from the bottom of the well. It could be talking, singing, or screaming. Don't try to understand what it's saying. Don't look into the well. 18, 19. Return to Patience immediately. She will gallop back to the barn. Hold on tight, and don't look back at the castle. 20, 21. If you see lights on in the castle windows, ride faster. 22. The barn and stables are behind a door I hadn't noticed before, marked only by a small horseshoe. The air inside smells of hay and horses. A surprisingly normal, almost comforting scent. There are 4 horses in the stable, but only one is gray. As I approach, Patience looks at me with her deep, intelligent eyes. I open her stable door, and she neighs softly, pressing her nose against my chest as if in sympathy. You've done this before, haven't you, young lady? I whisper. She hums, seemingly in agreement. The offering is simple. A covered pot, radiating warmth and the aroma of herbs and meat. Whatever was inside, it was for someone who still preferred a hot stew. The trail began, as described in the brochure, as a narrow dirt road winding into the dense forest behind the warehouse. As soon as Patton stepped onto this path, the city lights went out, and we were surrounded by thick trees, unable to see even the stars. Patience moved with steady steps. Her hooves softly pressed down on the soft earth. My gaze remained fixed on her ears, watching them turn, listening to the sounds of the surrounding forest. 10 minutes into the ride, the first sound came. Eric. It was my mother's voice. My mother, who had died of cancer 2 years ago. Eric, baby, where you going? Come here. I miss you so much. My eyes welled with tears, but I kept my gaze focused on the horse's ears. The voice came from the depths of the woods to my left. Please, Eric, don't you want to see me one last time? I'm right here. Look at me. Just once. Patience pressed her ear to my head and quickened her pace to a jog. The voice followed us, growing more desperate and more urgent. You left me to die. You weren't there when I needed you. You should at least look at me. These accusations pierced my heart like knives, because some of them were true. I had missed the last few days of her life. I hadn't returned until the very last week, stuck in another state, working a job I was going to lose anyway. Guilt gnawed at me like a living, breathing thing, but I didn't look at her. Other voices joined my mother's. My ex-girlfriend, my high school best friend who had moved away, and my father, whom I hadn't heard from in 5 years. They were all calling to me from the darkness, some pleading, some accusing, and some just sobbing in pain. Patience started to jog, and I gripped the reins tightly, burying my face in her mane, trying to block out the voices. I glimpsed figures moving to the woods, their gait unsteady, their limbs clumsy, and their faces slightly elongated. Thank goodness. The forest had finally come to an end, and we had reached the clearing. The castle stood before us, like a decayed tooth. 3 of its 4 towers had collapsed, and ivy completely covered the walls, as if the forest were slowly swallowing it up. But as the brochure had said, the gates were open, the rusty iron doors twisted into various shapes. We entered the courtyard, our pace gradually slowing. Moonlight filled the courtyard, bright enough to cast clear shadows. The well, a circular stone structure with an iron roof, stood in the center of the courtyard. I dismounted, my legs trembling, and carried a delivery bag toward the well. Before I even reached it, sounds rang out. I was already halfway there. First came laughter, the elegant, clear laughter of nobles at a banquet. Then came music, A string quartet playing a complex Baroque piece. People spoke languages I couldn't understand, their voices mingling and overlapping. The sound of horses' hooves on pebbles, the cries of children, women singing lullabies, men shouting commands, the clanging of swords, someone praying in Latin. It was as if all the sounds that had ever occurred in this place were simultaneously emanating from the well, compressed, superimposed, merging into a chaotic symphony. It should have been unbearable, but for some reason, it wasn't. It was almost beautiful. I walked to the well and held the delivery bag to the opening. The well was pitch black, as if a void was pulling at my eyes, forcing me to look deeper. I released the bag. There was no sound of the bag falling to the bottom. It was as if the echoes of history were playing back, growing louder and more frantic. Then a voice answered me, a voice from the abyss, speaking an ancient language. It wasn't speaking to me. It was speaking through me, and I could feel its sound vibrating in the soft tissues of my bones, teeth, and internal organs. Its meaning had passed through my consciousness, reaching a primal part of my brain, a place that understands hunger, darkness, and the patience of those who live forever in the abyss. It was saying thank you. I ran back to patience, and out of pure fear, I smoothly mounted her. She needed no urging, turned and charged toward the gate, her hooves sparking on the cobblestones. As we galloped through the gate, I made a mistake. I glanced back. Every window in the castle was filled with light, candles, torches. The whole building radiated a warm glow, brimming with life and celebration. I could see shadows moving behind the glass. People were dancing and dining. In the highest window of the last remaining tower, a figure watched us. It was incredibly tall, and even from this distance, I could see its head was oddly shaped. Too narrow, too long, and wearing something on its head, like antlers. It raised an arm, as if waving, or perhaps offering a blessing. Patience galloped faster than any horse I'd ever seen before. The forest on either side fading into a blur of darkness. We only slowed down when we saw the lights of a warehouse ahead. I just dismounted when my phone buzzed. $134.50 has been deposited into your account. Before the theater delivery, I'd done 2 months of normal deliveries, or rather, the normality of the job. An order was left on a doorstep. No one answered, but the door opened automatically 30 seconds after I left. A midnight delivery to a cemetery, placed on a specific tombstone, with singing in the distance. A package was handed to a taxi driver who didn't say a word. I looked at him for 5 seconds and couldn't remember what he looked like, but all of that was manageable. Terrifying, but manageable. The theater delivery was different. 2:17 a.m., phone buzzing, Theater District subway station, platform 7. The section about this delivery in the brochure is longer and more detailed than the others, with appendices and footnotes in different handwriting, as if several delivery men have added warnings over the years. 1. The Theater District subway station has 6 platforms. Platform 7 is only open between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. You must complete the delivery within this time frame. 2. 3. Enter through the main entrance on 7th Street. Station staff will not assist you. This is normal. 4. 5. Purchase a token from the machine. Tokens are required. Debit cards are not accepted. The machine only accepts cash. Insert exactly $2.75. 6. 7. Go down to platform 1. Walk to the end, which is at the tunnel entrance. There's a door marked Employee Only, Platform 7. This door will be open during delivery hours. 8. 9. The stairs behind this door are deeper than usual. Count the steps. If there are more than 127, you've gone too far. Return to the top and start again. 10. 11. Platform 7 is empty. It is always empty. If you see anyone else on Platform 7, leave immediately and report to the dispatch center. Do not deliver goods. 12. 15. Walk to the center of the platform. You will see a bench that is different from the other station furniture. It is older, ornately decorated, made of dark wood, and has brass fittings. Place your delivery items on this bench. 14. 15. A train will arrive in 3 minutes. This train is not on the timetable and is not a regular subway train. 16. 17. There may be passengers in the carriage. Do not make eye contact with anyone in the carriage. If they talk to you or gesture to you, do not respond. 18. 19. The doors will not open. This is intentional. Passengers will take packages from a bench in some unknown way. You do not need to know the specific method. 20. 21. After the train departs, wait a full 60 seconds. Then return the way you came. Do not run. Running will attract attention. 22. 23. Deliverman JM's tip. Trains sometimes stop at the wrong spot. If the door coincides with where you are standing, close your eyes and count to 30. Don't open your eyes, no matter what you hear or feel. 24. 25. Deliverman DR's tip. I heard someone calling my name in the train car. I accidentally responded. 3 days later, I heard the same sound coming from my closet. I moved. I suggest you strictly follow the rules. 26. The package was a white cardboard box, sealed with red tape. It was heavier than it looked, and the contents made a wet, slippery sound when I picked it up. The box was cold, colder than a warehouse freezer. At this time, the subway station was deserted, save for the buzzing and flashing fluorescent lights. The ticket booth attendant was an old man reading a newspaper, and as the pamphlet said, his gaze never left the paper as I passed. The automatic ticket machine mechanically swallowed my banknotes and spat out a brass token that looked like it came from another era. The token bore an unfamiliar subway system logo. The metal was warm in my palm. Platform 1 was deserted, the tiles gleaming under the glaring lights. I walked toward the end of the tunnel, my footsteps echoing, each echo accompanied by a new sound. Another set of footsteps, slightly out of sync with mine, coming from a direction I couldn't discern. A door marked Employees Only. Platform 7 stood out starkly against the concrete and steel of the station, but was made of wood. The wood was a deep, almost black color, carved with symbols that were almost unbearable to look at. Behind the door, a spiral staircase descended, the walls on either side pressed tightly against the floor. I counted each step aloud, my voice weak, swallowed by the enclosed space. 27, 28, 29. The air grew colder and more oppressive, carrying the smell of metal and electricity. 63, 64, 65. I heard music coming from above or below. I thought jazz, the kind played in underground bars during Prohibition. 99, 100, 101. My phone died at step 112, plunging me into darkness with only the intermittent flashing of the emergency light. 123, 124, 125, 126, 127. The bottom door was modern, like other emergency exits in the subway system. I pushed it open. Something was off about platform 7, but it wasn't immediately obvious. Its dimensions were wrong. Too long and too narrow, the ceiling too high. The color of the tiles on the walls was wrong too, a deep burgundy that no urban planner would approve, and it was eerily silent, as if the platform were in a mysterious space where sound couldn't travel normally. The bench was in the center of the platform, just as described. It had a rustic beauty, like furniture in a mansion, not a subway station. The brass fittings gleamed, and the wood was intricately carved with patterns. I thought they resembled vines, or perhaps snakes. I placed the white box on the bench and stepped back. The wait was agonizing. My watch showed 2:34 a.m. I still had time, plenty of time before the delivery deadline, but every second felt like an hour. The silence was oppressive, making my eardrums ache. I began to perceive my breathing and heartbeat with unusual clarity. At 2:37 a.m., I felt it first, then heard it, a vibration in the air, the change in air pressure making my ears ring. Then came the sound, the distinctive rumble of an approaching train. The train emerging from the tunnel wasn't modern. It was old, incredibly old, like a relic from the early days of subway. The carriages were made of dark wood and brass, bathed in warm yellow light. Through the windows, I could see the passengers. My blood froze instantly. The passengers were dressed in clothing from different eras. A woman wore a 1920s-style modern dress. A man wore a Victorian-era suit. A child wore tattered clothes from the Great Depression. A soldier wore a World War II uniform. They sat or stood, swaying slightly with the train's movement, each staring intently at me. Something was off about their expressions. Not obviously, not in a way I could articulate, but something felt off. Their proportions, their expressions, even the rhythm of their blinks. The train slowed, slower and slower. For a moment, I even thought it would stop right in front of me. The doors right in front of me, just as I was about to cover my eyes. The train suddenly moved forward 3 feet and stopped. The doors didn't open, but passengers by the windows pressed their hands against the glass, their handprints condensing into fog on the cold surface. Some laughed. Others stared intently out the window, their gazes focused and heavy. The feeling sent chills down my spine. In the car closest to me, a woman mouthed something to me. I couldn't hear her through the glass, but I could read her lips. "Can you hear me?" I turned my face away, my gaze fixed on the floor, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. Something was knocking on the window, a rapid, urgent knock, as if trying to get my attention. I didn't turn around. More knocking came from several windows, the intermittent rhythm, sounding almost like Morse code. Then came voices, somewhat muffled through the glass, but still clearly audible all at once. "Look at us. We just want to talk. Don't be so rude." "Eric? Eric, is that you?" The last voice made me shudder. It sounded like my mother's voice again, but distorted, as if coming from a broken speaker. "Eric, darling, I'm right here. I've been waiting for you. Look at me. Just this once, please." I try not to look up, my eyes burning. I silently counted down the seconds, trying to block out the sounds. The white box on the bench was gone. I didn't see it disappear. I didn't hear it. It was just gone. The sound stopped abruptly. The train jerked off, slowly at first, then gradually accelerating until it disappeared into the tunnel on the other side of the platform. The rumble faded into the distance, and I was once again alone in absolute silence. I counted to 60, each number feeling like a small victory. Then I walked, not running, though my instinct screamed at me to sprint back to the door, up the 127 steps, across the station, and into the city night, where the air had never tasted so sweet. I had just reached the ground when my phone rang. $203.75 has been deposited into your account. I probably have 1 or 2 more stories to tell, but more orders have come in, so I'll be back. Story 5, Pattern Recognition. Before you go, I want to tell you about a new research study. Sarah says, "I've been seeing Sarah as my therapist for 6 months now, and she's worn the same cardigan to all of our sessions. I know that this is for my benefit, as she once said hello to me when I came to reschedule an appointment, and she was wearing a green jumper instead. The cardigan is unbuttoned today, and a small part of me is dreading the inevitable wardrobe change this summer." What kind of study? It's to look on the effects of a training regime to help people with prosopagnosia to recognize faces. They've been developing some software for the past 5 years, and now they're ready for their first trial. Would you be interested? Sure. It's not something I say with enthusiasm. I've failed to recognize my sister when she joined the same gym as me, and a particularly disgusting ex once took advantage of my condition to try and chat me up after our breakup, whilst pretending to literally be a whole new man. Fortunately, that last event happened at a party, and a friend quickly swooped in, but still, you can see why I wouldn't be overly optimistic on the matter. I received an email with information about the software the very next day. There was even an app version as well as a website. Both logged the time I had spent training, and told me what level of facial recognition I was currently at. It was sort of like Duolingo or those brain training games. I still wasn't feeling very hopeful, but I was worried that Sarah would ask to see how many exercises I completed, and I didn't want to look as if I hadn't tried The first week was frustrating. My level was apparently creeping upwards, but it felt like I was guessing a lot of the time. In the second week, though, I started to actually improve. I recognized the people on the app, really recognized them, and even managed to recognize my sister when she was in the gym sauna. Her hair was wet and curlier than she usually styled it. Her face was flushed and the light was dim, and yet I still knew who she was without her opening her mouth. I was elated. Soon I was spending every free moment on the training app, and I was making a game of recognizing people who I saw in my day-to-day life. There were a couple people at my gym who must pretty much be my neighbors, as their faces reappeared regularly and I'd never even known. I begun to be able to recognize which actors were featuring in more than one of my favorite shows. I became obsessed with my own reflection, fascinated that I could now recognize it as my own even in things that weren't mirrors but windows and screens. One of the exercises in the pattern recognition software would show me a complete normal face and then a version of that face made of only dots or dots and lines. Sometimes it looked like the result of motion capture software, or similar. I was then challenged to pick out this dot and line face out of other faces made of dots and lines. I'm not telling you this because I think it's interesting, but to explain why the first time I saw a disembodied face, I wasn't actually worried. It was in a towel that I'd left scrunched up on the floor. I'd heard of people seeing face shapes in places where no faces could be before, but perhaps because of my condition, I'd never experienced it. Who are you then? I asked the towel and stared at it in wonderment before deciding that it probably didn't belong on the floor, face or no face. I kept reaching new heights on my favorite app. I showed it to my friend Lisa one day. So it shows you this face C, and then it shows you the same face again, but it's been distorted in some way, and you have to pick it out of a bunch of others distorted in the same way. In the earlier rounds, the changes were very subtle, and the person would just go from a neutral expression to being slightly annoyed or tilting their head differently. But I've gotten so good at it that it gives me more extreme distortions now. Are you ready? Mary took one more second to memorize the face of man on the screen, and then nodded decisively. I pressed a button, and the normal face disappeared to be replaced with a set of 10 wavy, murky faces. Wait, what? Mary exclaimed. No, that's impossible. I don't know. 4. My guess is it's number 4. It's 7. I pressed face number 7, and my selection was outlined in green. The sign taught I'd chosen correctly. That's crazy. Did you guess? Or have you already done this one? I smiled at her proudly. Nope, none of the questions are repeated. I just knew. Wow. I guess you won't need me to be protecting you from scheming ex-boyfriends anymore. I shrugged. I don't know. I mean, this app has improved my facial recognition, but it hasn't improved my taste in men. I'm sure I'll date people with new and interesting ways of screwing me over for you to save me from. Seemingly in response to an argument that I hadn't been following, the barman turned the TV off, and I looked up at it instinctively, ready to test my ability to pick out any faces that might be reflected on its surface. Instead of the barman or any of the patrons, though, I saw the face of a woman from my gym. Her face was so large in the screen that if it had been a real reflection, then she would have to have been stood inches from the screen, so close that she'd have blocked the whole thing. You okay? Mary asked. The face in the TV was gone already. I'd known that people could sometimes see vague pretend faces in clouds and the like, but I hadn't known it was possible to see faces that didn't exist in a good level of detail on flat surfaces, or that the face could be a face you'd seen before. I'm fine, I replied. Maybe it wasn't the same face. My recognition had come along leaps and bounds, but it probably wasn't perfect yet. I'd probably just seen a similar face and thought it was the face of somebody I'd seen before. Perhaps if I kept training, this kind of thing wouldn't happen. I was on a bus the next time something like that happened. I'd already reached a point where I could tell which of the faces sat around me I'd seen before on our daily commute. But the face that surprised me today wasn't on the inside of the bus. It was dark and miserable outside, and in the reflection of one of the windows, I saw him, Towel Man, a face that I'd first seen on a crumpled towel on my floor, and now here he was, reflected in the window. I looked in the seat where he must be sitting, but there was nobody there. Looking back at his reflection, I realized that although I could see his face, that was all I could see. There was no haircut, no shoulders, No body. The bus slowed to a halt, and I ran out into the rain, even though I was a good half an hour's walk from my usual stop. I felt sick, and I needed to be away from the face. For the first time since I'd started my training, I did everything I could to avoid seeing any reflections in the windows I passed. I stared resolutely at the floor in front of me, and when a series of cracks in front of me formed a face that I knew was familiar, I actually screamed. I ran the rest of the way home and hid under my covers like a child, closing my eyes to keep any faces out of my vision. I called in sick to work the next day, and it wasn't entirely a lie. I did feel sick, my tongue tasting acid anytime I thought too hard about the faces I'd seen. Why hadn't Towel Man had a body? There was another revelation gnawing at me, waiting for me to figure it out. I didn't want to know, but eventually my brain asked me the question anyway. The woman in the TV that I'd seen in the gym, had she definitely had a body, or had I only seen her reflected in things? Somewhere that she could conceivably have been stood behind others or through thick steam in the steam room. I left my room to get a drink and pretended that I couldn't see the outline of a face on the wall. Could this still be relatively normal? I Googled seeing faces where they shouldn't be and came across the concept of pareidolia, but that seemed less intense than what I was going through. I tried a few more searches with slightly different terms, and Google suggested everything from spiritual reasons to outright schizophrenia. It wasn't until the next day that I thought of checking the contact details for the people who'd made the app. I went to open the app up to check for a contact us section, but instead the entire app was down for maintenance. Desperate, I decided to head down to my therapist's office. Every part of the task was a nightmare. Open my wardrobe to get clothes. There's a face hiding in the folds. Look in my bag for my keys. There's a little face there too. I closed my eyes for some bus ride, just so I wouldn't have to see the disembodied faces. And when I arrived at Sarah's office, I must have looked terrible. I'll see if she's free, the receptionist said almost as soon as I walked through the door. Sarah looked worried when she came out to see me. Hi, it's me, Sarah. I know. Her hair was tied up, and she was wearing a shirt with no jumper or cardigan at all. Previously, these changes would have made her a complete stranger to me, but not anymore. We walked to her office. What happened? She asked. It's the study, dash. I stopped myself because I realized that when I'd said that the study was a problem. Sarah had tensed up so much that it was almost a wince. She discussed my prosopagnosia and the anxiety issues that had given me with a perfect poker face in the past. But she knew something had happened with the study. It isn't just me, is it? I asked. There have recently been some reports of other members of the study seeing faces where they didn't expect to. This has only happened very recently, though, and whilst it might seem distressing, seeing an occasional face in the shadows can be very normal. The study has been paused for the time being, though, and even when it starts back up, nobody's going to make you continue if you don't want to. I wanted to ask her for more details or what to do, but I saw a face in the shredded documents in the waste paper basket by Sarah's feet. I'd seen her face before. She was familiar to me. But worst of all, her eyes moved to look right at me. I ran out of the room despite Sarah's pleas for me to wait and turned all the lights out when I got home. As I write, just the phone's glare is the only light in the room, and even that feels risky. But I had to tell somebody what was happening because I don't know what these faces are, but they're everywhere, and they know I can see them. Story 6. I lost control of my body, and I think they planned it. Finally, it was time for my evening rest. I'd had a hard day at work, and around the house there had been plenty to do as well. Early summer always meant endless chores. By evening, though, my wife was reading a bedtime story to our daughter, and I gave myself a little time to relax. I sat out on the front porch, sipping a cold beer and watching the clear, starry sky. Tonight the stars were especially bright. Then suddenly, a scream cut through the quiet. A woman's scream, not too far away. It must have come from somewhere on the street, maybe from one of the houses. Squinting in the light of the street lamps, I tried to see who it was. That's when I noticed a man a few houses down. He was running like someone was chasing him, or like he was in a race. He was shirtless, barefoot, his soles slapping against the asphalt. He ran into the yard of the house and slammed straight into the front door. I heard the loud thud as he hit the wood. He bounced off, stumbled, but got back up and kept running, as if nothing had happened. I stood up from my rocking chair to see what the hell was going on. As soon as the man noticed me, he started running in my direction, fast, like I was his target. "What the hell's wrong with you, man?" I shouted when he got closer. "Are you on drugs?" But he didn't slow down. He was charging straight at me. I took a step back. There was something terrifying about this unstoppable figure, and when he came even closer, panic seized me. The man was covered in dirt and blood. His legs were caked in mud, his pajama pants torn. A gash split open his forehead, blood streaming down and painting his face red. Still, he didn't stop. He lunged at me, but I wasn't going down without a fight. I smashed the beer bottle in my hand against his head. It exploded into shards, glass spraying everywhere. The man dropped from the blow, but he didn't pass out, as if nothing mattered. He jumped back up and came at me again. Glass shards were still embedded in his face, and he didn't even flinch as I heard the crunch of glass under his bare feet. Somebody called the cops. I shouted, but it was no use. He barreled into me with such force that we both crashed backward, splintering our front door. We tumbled into the living room, wrestling on the floor. I pounded him with everything I had, but he didn't care. He wanted only one thing, to grab my forehead. Again and again, he reached for me, stretching his arm no matter how many times I shoved him away. I landed a brutal punch, and his eyes rolled back as if he were unconscious, but his body kept moving. I shoved him aside, and he toppled over the back of the couch. Then another scream rang out. I spun around. It had come from behind me. "Jesus, Jeremy, what the hell is happening?" Sandra's voice cried out from the stairs. She was watching me fight with the man. "Go back, Sandra. Call the police." I shouted frantically, but that moment's distraction was enough. The man lunged back, right beside me, and pressed his palm against my forehead. "It's yours now," he said hoarsely, blood spilling from his shattered mouth. Suddenly, everything turned strange. Something seized my body, something I couldn't control. I was no longer master of my own actions. The next thing I knew, my legs were carrying me, running out to the broken door into the dark street. It was a horrible feeling, like a waking dream, like those sleep paralysis stories I'd read about. I couldn't move a muscle. Not a single part of my body responded. Yet I could see and feel everything. I felt the cool night air blowing across my face, heard the honk of a car horn, and the pounding of my boots echoing down the silent street. My body, however, wouldn't react to me. It was willing to do only one thing: run. I didn't know where it was going or why, but it ran as if something was driving it toward a single purpose. I ran for what felt like forever, until my legs and the rest of me should have given out. Eventually, I reached a small row of shops. I'd come here before or after work to pick up a few things, maybe half an hour's walk from our house. My body zeroed in on the liquor store. Sprinting with such speed, I thought it would tear itself apart. The worst part was it wasn't slowing down. The store's front door was getting closer and closer, and I couldn't make it stop. I slammed into the door with bone-jarring force. For a second, I thought it might rip out of the wall, but I just bounced off and crashed to the ground. My body, as uncontrollable as ever, immediately pushed itself back up. A red haze clouded over my right eye, probably from a cut on my head, but the pain barely registered. I knew I was hurt, but my body didn't care. It threw itself against the door again. "Get the hell out of here," someone shouted from inside. "We're closed, you crazy drunk." For the briefest moment, my body hesitated. Or maybe I only imagined it pausing away the words. Then, almost instantly, it spun around and bolted off again, charging through everything in its path. It knocked over a trash bin, tumbled across a bench, and hurled itself back onto the road, which luckily was nearly empty at this late hour. Straight ahead, it locked onto the direction of the dark, wooded area nearby. Even in the forest, There was no stopping. My body just barreled through. Branches, bushes, and undergrowth snagged and cut into me, but none of it mattered. I just kept running, forward and forward, until my strength should have failed. Inside my mind, I was screaming. In my head, the voice howled and begged to stop, but my mouth wouldn't open. I wasn't in control of it. And then came the thing I dreaded most, the steep slope in the woods. I knew this place. We'd gone hiking here before. I knew the slope wasn't far. It didn't take long. In the darkness of the forest, I felt my body suddenly surge forward, faster than I'd ever run in my life. I lost my footing and went tumbling down the hillside, slamming into every bush, every branch, every bit of undergrowth on the way, until finally, I crashed full force into a tree. And then there was nothing but darkness. My mind jolted awake in terror. I was screaming inside again, but my body still wasn't mine. Maybe I had blacked out earlier, probably from shock. I don't know, but my body, no longer under my control, was wide awake, and it was running. I was sprinting along the side of a highway in the middle of the night. I didn't know where I was or where I was headed, but in the distance, I could already see the glow of a city at night. I think my body must have run for 2 straight hours. My mind was foggy, weak, confused. Honestly, I wasn't even sure how long I had been running, but the city was right there, looming ahead. I was terrified that this would be the end, that a car would slam into me, or I'd run headlong into something sharp and impale myself. My body was already covered in injuries. My clothes were stained with blood, and somewhere along the way I'd lost half a boot. But my body wasn't afraid of the city. It just kept barreling forward as if nothing mattered. Across crosswalks, streets, parks, through red lights, bike paths, even splashing through fountains. Inside my head, I was screaming. At every corner, I thought for sure I'd be hit by a car or smash against something. But my body just kept running, mechanical, relentless. My mind could barely take the strain anymore. My vision blurred. The glow of the streetlights smeared together. But still my body pressed on. In a narrow side street, some young people outside a nightclub pointed their phones at me, recording. My body didn't so much as glance at them. It just kept running, focused on one direction, until finally I reached a large square. At the far end loomed a massive office building, and my body charged straight for it. I slammed into the thick glass doors with bone-rattling force. The world spun as I crashed to the ground, but my body didn't care. It scrambled back up immediately. That's when I saw the security guard standing in the doorway, staring at me in shock. His face said it all. What the hell is wrong with this guy? But my body didn't care. It hurled itself at the glass again, smashing against the wall. The guard spoke into his radio, then swung the door open. What the fuck is wrong with you, man? Jesus, you're covered in blood, he shouted. But that was all my body needed. It lunged straight at the guard. That was all my body needed. No matter how hard I begged inside my head for it to stop, I had no control anymore. I was nothing more than a passenger in my own flesh. I lunged at the guard, just like that man had once lunged at me in my own home. As I slammed into him at full speed, we both went crashing back into the grand lobby of the office building. We grappled, though really, there was a guard struggling to hold back my uncontrollable body, because just like that other man, I had only one goal, to grab his forehead. I fought for it like a wild animal. No matter how hard I screamed inside for my body to stop, it didn't listen. With great effort, the guard finally forced me to the ground. Panting, he fumbled for his radio. I assumed he was trying to call for backup, to get someone to help restrain me. But then, the elevator doors slid open across the lobby, and out stepped an elderly man in a white lab coat, carrying a briefcase. He froze, stunned, as he took in the scene, the guard barely holding me down, while I writhed and thrashed on the floor like a madman. The moment my body saw the old man, who looked every bit like a doctor, it went completely berserk. My arm tore free of the guard's grip, and I drove my elbow into his face. The instant he let go, my body sprang up and charged at the old man. Terrified, the doctor staggered backward into the elevator just as I came rushing toward him. But I was too late. The doors had already closed. I slammed into the sealed metal. with a sickening thud. The display showed the cabin rising to the 6th floor. Without a shred of hesitation, my body spun around and bolted into the stairwell. My body charged up the stairs without tiring. Almost nothing could stop it, except for a locked door. I slammed into a reinforced metal security door on the 6th floor, the kind that only opened with a key card. Blood splattered across it as I hit. My nose gushed again, but like all the other pain, it only came to me faintly, dull, distant. The door didn't budge, but my body wasn't ready to quit. It rammed the door again, by sheer coincidence. That was the moment a member of the janitorial staff was about to come out. I crashed through his mop cart, scattering everything. The young cleaner hit the floor hard as I bowled him over, but whoever was controlling me didn't care. My body tore down the hallway, because at the far end stood the old man in the white coat. He was arguing with another security guard, and this one very clearly had a gun. He wasn't just some front desk rent-a-cop. I begged with everything I had to take control back, to stop what I already knew was about to happen. But no one was listening. The guard immediately drew his weapon the moment he saw me sprinting at them. "Stop right there," he shouted, pointing the gun straight at me. No matter how much I strained, my body kept charging. Sprinting like a lunatic, the gun fired. A bullet cracked into the ground right in front of me, a warning shot. But my controller didn't care. I kept rushing forward like a madman. The guard fired again, and this time the bullet tore into my thigh. I felt the searing burn, but my body didn't stop. The guard froze in disbelief, unable to process it, and I crashed into him with such force that we both slammed into the wall. He dropped heavily to the ground, dazed, but my body had other plans. The old man had moved a few steps away, fumbling at a locked door. Bloody, filthy, I lunged at him. "No, please, don't hurt me," the old man shouted. "I didn't know this would happen to you." I didn't understand what he meant, or even if he was talking to me at all. My body straddled the old man. I raised my right hand high toward the ceiling, then brought it down onto his forehead, the very same hand I had lifted moments ago. "It's yours now," my voice said, but it wasn't me speaking. My mind knew it was my voice, but the words weren't mine. It was as if someone else, far away, maybe not even from this world, was speaking through me. The instant the words left my mouth, my body collapsed limply to the floor. Agony consumed me. Everything burned. Every inch of me screamed with pain. I couldn't even tell what hurt the most, but I was back in control. I had my body again, groaning, half-conscious. I lay face down on the cold marble floor. "Dr. Jellin, are you okay?" The guard rushed over at last. I just lay there, dazed. But the doctor, he wasn't himself anymore. He slowly got to his feet. From the corner of my eye, I watched every move. He didn't run, didn't panic. He simply stood, then walked calmly to the wall. The guard kept asking if he was all right, but the doctor gave no answer. He just stood against the wall and slammed his forehead into it, hard. Blood split open instantly. The guard tried to stop him, but the old man kept smashing his head into the wall until nothing was left but a pulped, bloody ruin. My last memory before blacking out was the guard calling for help over his radio. Then I passed out too. I don't know how long I was out, but I woke up in a hospital. Every part of me ached, and I felt like I'd been run over by a truck. The days were hell, and as if that wasn't enough, people kept coming in and out of my room. Doctors, cops, detectives, even some special unit agents. Everyone had the same thing. Endless questions. What happened? How? When? And to all of them, I could only tell the same story. Thankfully, Sandra was finally allowed in after several interrogations, but poor thing, she didn't know much either. All she could do was try to calm me down a little. The whole thing was nothing but a mystery to me, just like the man who came into my room one night. He was young, bald, dressed all in black, and reeked of cigarette smoke. He didn't introduce himself, didn't really say anything. He only asked me to tell the whole story of what had happened. So I did. I told him everything. He was the only one who stayed calm the entire time, never once interrupting. He listened as if he already knew exactly what I was talking about. When I finally finished, he stood up from the chair by my bed. he said thoughtfully. So it worked after all. I stared at him suspiciously. What worked? Who the hell was this guy? Sir, I asked quietly, what was all of this really? The bald man gave me a dismissive look. That doesn't matter, he said after a pause. What matters is that the transfer worked, and that old man won't be meddling in things he should have stayed out of anymore. I had 1,000 more questions, but the moment I opened my mouth to ask even one, the man simply walked out of the room. The last thing burned into my mind was his strange black eyes, looking at me as if I were nothing more than some roadside cockroach. Story 7. I thought I'd be safe working from home. I'm not so sure anymore. I don't have anyone else to tell, so I'm turning to you. I've been working a fully remote job for the past year. It can get lonely, holed up in my apartment, but my cat Mimi keeps me company. As I hunch over my screen, she rubs her head tenderly against my leg and jumps on my lap. I sit up straight, letting go of my mouse one moment to pet her sweet head. At all times and for all things, she is my light. Until last year, I had been working as a barista, meager wages, yet enough to sustain the little life Mimi and I had made for ourselves. I was content, happy to chat my shift away with my customers, happy to enjoy free drinks as a work perk. But I quit after an incident that left me scarred, literally. To make a long story short, a customer, sweet-talking though slightly off-putting, took an uncomfortable liking to me. He was a regular. Drank his coffee black with a splash of cream. He would add himself at the pickup counter. One night, he was waiting for me outside the coffee shop, his hand wrapped tight around a brick from a nearby construction site. I thought I'd be safe working from home. I'm not so sure anymore. I'm now employed by a tech company, providing human feedback for all things large language models, generative AI, and search engines. It's repetitive but somewhat interesting work, although extremely impersonal. I've yet to speak to anyone from corporate, nor do I know any co-workers. As a matter of fact, I've barely even signed a contract, but I get paid on time, and I can watch movies as I work through infinite and mind-numbingly simple tasks. A few cents per submission quickly adds up, and I get paid extra for agreeing to rate NSFW content. It started 2 months back. I was working at my desk, per usual, and about to take a break to feed Mimi, who was already clawing at the back of my chair. Just one more task, baby, I whispered as I clicked around on the screen. I was rating search engine results for online queries. I submitted my task, ready to log out. That's when I saw it. My full name, spelled out in the search bar. Now, my name is rather unique. The company, of course, had my contact information on file. Do they use employee data to generate fake queries for us to evaluate? I don't remember reading anything about this in any of my onboarding documents. Was this a real search? Then, I stared at the screen. Now, I've searched for an old classmate or two to ruminate over the accomplishments they've immortalized on the internet before. But I couldn't be too flattered. It was a word that followed my name that sent a chill down my spine. Address. Was someone looking for me? I scanned the search results I was meant to evaluate. None of them, thankfully, displayed my real address. I thought I might have been overreacting. Ever since the incident at the coffee shop, I've been overly on my guard. Lost a few friends I had this way, including the co-worker who found us and saved me that dreadful night. Paranoia got the best of me. I wish I could say I worked on myself, but I didn't. I closed in on myself, locked the door, and threw away the key. I order most of my groceries online nowadays, as well as any book I read. I used to love my local bookshops. The smell of old books was always extraordinarily pleasing to me, but browsing Amazon has since replaced any and all of my past life's rituals. So, yes, I've been on my guard. When my package went missing, later to find out my neighbor had mistakenly picked it up, his face was the first thing on my mind. A flash of his crooked smile appeared to me then, too. Could it be him, looking me up? I checked the user's location. my city, our city. Eventually, I had to submit the task and log off. Mimi was gnawing at the foot of my chair. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Yet, when I came back to work, half an hour later, routine was quick to set back in. Nothing abnormal, nothing unusual. I wanted to tell someone, call up a girlfriend, but the line stayed quiet. That night, I stared through my blinds at the dark a while before turning off the lights. A few weeks ago, new tasks were assigned to me, evaluating instructions for image generation. It consisted, in short, of classifying user requests as either safe or unsafe. No images, just queries. This, I'm assuming, is to prevent the model from producing anything inappropriate. Most of them were safe, entertaining. Even, I was still chuckling at what an earlier query had conjured up in my mind when I pressed submit. I popped a grape in my mouth as I waited for the next one to load. My heart sank when I found my name in the user search bar. Dead bitch. I felt sick, attacked all over again. My entire body was shaking as I hovered the cursor over the unsafe button. I read the query over and over again, hoping to find something different. I didn't. It really was my name, no one else's. I clicked submit and called out to Mimi, limbs trembling, begging for a bit of comfort. The page refreshed. The query disappeared. What appeared next was far from a relief. I gasped, tears welling up in my eyes. Face smashed in WHI brick. It was him, no doubt about it. Mimi, my best and my only friend, had walked into my bedroom, and however softer meows were in that moment, they were of no comfort to me. I thought of calling the police, but though I remember his breath, the empty look in his eyes, the ragged button-up he wore most days at the cafe, I never even knew his name. He always paid cash, and he was never caught, never entered into the system. My second reflex was to contact the company. Could they de-anonymize the user, given the violence of the requests? But again, I had never spoken to anyone from management. I didn't know who my team lead was. If I even had one, I did receive employee newsletters. But I had serious doubts the marketing team could do anything for me. I had never felt so alone, and God knows I had been. This, however scary it was to me, wasn't what prompted my writing this. After the second incident, I stopped working for a bit, fearing what my screen would show me next. The advantage of being a cog in so large an immaterial machine is that you can disappear at any time without a word. Not a single person would notice, and in my case, no one did. But I quickly realized I needed the money. I couldn't afford quitting either. This was the only job that would offer me shelter from the outside world. With what I knew, I couldn't and can't risk stepping outside. So I picked up some work again, my heart heavy with anxiety anytime a page took some time to load. I'd breathe a sigh of relief every time I turned off my monitor at the end of the day. For 2 months, my blinds remained drawn. But I can't go on pretending nothing happened after what I saw today. I took on more NSFW tasks as a moderator, hoping to make up for the week I had spent in bed. I would cover Mimi's eyes whenever she would come to sit on my lap. Those screens never really interested her, and I wasn't sure she could even comprehend any of it. Many of the pictures I could recognize from movies. Others were rather cartoonish in style. These were okay. Others were grainy, dark. I would rather not know where those came from or who took them, despite the gruesomeness involved in the task. I felt safe rating these pictures. I thought, perhaps naively, that though he could search what he pleased, he had nothing of the sort on me. I did not risk stumbling upon my name again. I was wrong. Today, I was proven entirely wrong because there on my screen I saw red. Everything red. Red blood, red flesh, red brick, and me. My face was an unrecognizable mess, beaten to a disgusting pulp, red like nothing I had ever seen in life and on my screen. But that hair was mine, and the collar of my shirt, though in the picture, soaked in blood, was unmistakable. It hasn't fit me in years, but I know where it comes from. My Facebook account is old, but remains publicly available. I lost my password a while ago. In my profile picture, I am still 18, full of life and color, untouched, untouchable. Mimi was still a kitten then. I had posted a picture of the tiny orange ball of energy she used to be. My page is full of my thoughts. Anything I found funny, anything I found interesting to share with all the world to see. This unbroken part of me still exists online, and I know he has seen it. I know he's reached right into it. I can't unsee myself. I can't forget how I looked in that picture. Dead. I don't know who to go to. I don't know what to do. Is there any way he would be able to find my address? Will that picture be enough to satisfy his urges? A question I've been asking myself every day for the last year echoes in my mind with renewed gravity. Why? Why me? Story 8. Tiny footsteps. Tiny, muffled steps hurried down the hall to our bedroom. They stopped just outside our door as a small hand slowly pushed open the old moaning door. There were more footsteps, then a small hop up onto the bed and a clumsy crawl up to right between my wife and I, my daughter, for often awakened in the middle of the night, to come seeking the safety only a parent's bed can provide. Having recently moved in, my wife and I have been lenient on allowing her to come and sleep with us. New houses come with new sound to get used to, new shadows to puzzle out in the dark. And though this house was new to us, it was actually quite old. There was no shortage of creaks and groans pervading the century-old floorboards and walls. We understood the transition would take some time, and she may feel uncomfortable for a while, but it wasn't a habit we wanted to encourage forever. Eventually, we would resume the ritual of returning her to her bed at whatever ungodly hour she'd come in. Not tonight, though, exhausted from a long day of wrangling in our new yard that the old owner had let go feral. I laid facing the wall, with my back to my daughter, implementing my recent strategy of ignoring her until she was dead asleep. Given the slightest bit of attention, even in the middle of the night, my daughter would have trouble finding sleep again. But fortunately, she settled in under the comforter and was quiet. I closed my eyes, hoping I could also go back to sleep quickly. About half a minute passed. Then, tap, tap, tap. Cold, tiny fingers poked my shoulder. I groaned, eyes still closed. Couldn't give her too much. She brought her arm back down quickly, but didn't say anything. My wife stirred on the other side of the bed. I tried to fall asleep again. I was just dozing off when I heard a thin and raspy voice mutter, "Daddy?" I grunted, coming to a start, but still half asleep. Her voice sounded a bit off, the way some sounds do when you are teetering on the edge of a dream, not sure which side of sleep it came from. I lay still, continuing my strategy. She said nothing else, and I was finally able to fall back to sleep. It was still dark outside when she kicked me with her little foot right in the back. I jolted awake and nudged her legs away, straightening her out. I reached over and tapped my phone on the bedside table to check the time. Through blurry eyes, I could see it was still a couple hours until morning. Deciding that I needed to get some good rest before another long day of yard work, I stood, then reached down and scooped at my daughter to take her back to her room. I managed to find my way down the hall to her room in the dark, trying to keep my eyes mostly closed so as not to wake up too much. Nudging open her moaning door with my shoulder, I saw moonlight shining through the bedroom window, illuminating my daughter's bed. Laying there, snuggled up under her covers with her doll, was my little girl, fast asleep. I froze, confused with what I was seeing. I blinked hard to clear away the haze of sleep. I slowly dipped my head to see who I was holding, and as the blurriness cleared, I saw another small girl, about my daughter's age, staring up at me with yellow eyes from sunken sockets. Cool moonlight illuminated horrible gray skin and thin tendrils of black hair. She looked frozen at first, then her lips parted slowly in a grin, revealing dirty brownish teeth. She wore a filthy nightgown with ruffles around the collar, and I became vividly aware of the scrawny, bony body beneath it. The dead girl giggled with her raspy voice, and I dropped her, letting out a shriek of terror. She hit the floorboard with a thud, then hopped to her feet and scurried out the door into the darkness, giggling as she went. I listened to her tiny footsteps fade away down the hall. "Daddy, I inhaled sharply as I turned to look over at my daughter's bed, realizing I hadn't been breathing. She was propped up on one arm, wiping the sleep out of her eyes with the other hand. "Hey," I said, barely able to squeak it out. I stepped over and scooped her up, then walked over to her doorway. I stood there for a moment listening, building the courage to step out into the hall. My room was only about 10 steps away, but it felt like a mile. Finally, fairly certain the hall was empty. I took the first step. The second one came easier, and soon I was in an all-out sprint. Sure, the dead girl was right behind me. I made it to our bed and placed my daughter down in the middle next to my wife, where she fell fast asleep. I lay still next to her until the sun came up, wide awake, eyes fixed on the dark hallway, listening for footsteps. Story 9. I made my sister stab a voodoo doll of our stepdad. Now she's addicted. Mom forced me and my sister onto a family road trip with our new dork-ass stepdad so we could bond with him. Instead, we decided to make him suffer. We rode in the back seat. Ellie's backpack sat between us. Quietly, she unzipped it and slid out the needle and doll. She wedged the doll between her thighs and aimed the needle at its rib cage. Her eyes snapped over me. I nodded and made a stabbing gesture. Ellie inched the needle down, but stopped. She nodded to Dale's hands on the steering wheel. What if we wrecked? I pinched a sliver of space between my thumb and index to scratch him. Ellie tried passing it to me. This was my idea, but her handiwork. Last week, I snagged a strand of hair from Dale's comb. Ellie stuffed it into some cotton and stitched an entire doll around it. She deserved first prick. One way or another, I'd make her do it. I cleared my throat. "Hey, Dale?" Dale turned down the volume on his Kenny G's Greatest Hits CD. "Hey, champ." Ellie was just expressing her interest in whatever it is you do. "Could you explain it again?" Using like lots of detail. "Oh, wow," Dale said. "Okay, yeah. Well, Ellie, as I'm sure you're aware, every city has an archive of municipal records." Ellie snatched the doll back into her lap. While Dale rambled, she aimed a needle at the tender spot under its armpit. She gave me one last look. I nodded. And you wouldn't think it, but pipe diameters make a heck of a difference when... Ellie ever so slightly pricked the spot. Dale released a blood-curdling scream and jerked the wheel, swerving into oncoming traffic. Tires screeched, car horns blared. Vehicles blasted past at 50 miles an hour, missing by inches. Mom screamed. She reached over, caught the wheel, and yanked us back into our lane. The car jerked right, and my head cracked against a window. Cars around us honked and slammed their brakes to miss us. Dale wrenched the wheel and straightened us out, still hollering in pain. Mom screamed over him. "What the hell are you doing?" "Oh, geez," Dale said. Oh, geez. Something's wrong." He cut the wheel and peeled off the side of the road, skidding to a stop. He threw it in park and rolled up his shirt, flashing his pasty white skin. "What's there?" he shouted. "What's there?" Mom's eyes darted across his skin. I don't see anything." "Something's there." "Honey, hold on. Let me look." "No, nothing's there." Dale examined himself. Then he dropped his head into the headrest. In the rear view mirror, I saw sweat beading on his forehead. His glasses fogged up. I thought it did cause a little pain. Not almost kill him. I felt immediate regret. Mom turned to us, still catching her breath. "You guys okay?" I nodded. Ellie said, "Yep." A blanket now covered her legs. Mom turned back to Dale. "Should we go to the ER?" "It's gone now, I think. Just drive for a bit, okay?" Mom nodded. When they opened their doors and stepped out, I glanced at Ellie. The blanket was off. The doll was in her lap, and the needle was pinched between her fingers. Ellie was grinning. "Ellie," I said, "put away. Now." Mom and Dale climbed back into the car. Dale leaned the passenger seat back and bumped Ellie's knees. "Whoops. Do you have enough room, sweetie?" "Uh-huh." Mom accelerated us back onto the highway. Ellie hovered the needle over the doll's groin. Her eyes flicked back to me. I shook my head. A little grin formed on her lips. She danced the needle up his pelvis, his stomach, and paused on his throat. Stop. I mouthed. That only made her smile harder. A switch had flipped. A world of possibilities had opened. She inched the needle from his neck to his face. The point stalled over his eye. I reached over to stop her. Mom exhaled. You know, maybe we should go to the hospital. No, Dale said. I'm okay now. But that was bizarre. It's like something stung me. Then my inside were on fire. He forced a chuckle. And now the kids think their new dad is crazy. Don't they? My hand was an inch from the doll when Ellie twisted her body, blocking me. I reached around her, feeling for it. She swatted my hand. Give it to me, I said. I'm not done, she said. I jammed my knuckles hard into her side, knocking the wind from her. The needle clinked on the floorboard. Then I caught the doll's left arm and tugged it my way. Ellie snatched the right and tugged back. Did you guys hear me? Dale asked. I said, you guys think I'm Sarah. Hey, what are you guys fighting about? Dale turned. His eyes locked onto what was in our hands. Wait, is that... Ellie and I yanked at the same time, and a wet, warm explosion sprayed inside the car. Mom was blinded. Screaming, we slammed into a concrete median and scraped along until another car popped us, putting us in a tailspin. Mom fought with the wheel, but our momentum carried us around and around until we sank off the side of the road. We barrel rolled, dropped, and smashed into a ditch. Everything blurred. I remember Mom crying. Something wet dribbled near the front seat, and at one point, a sharp pain plucked at my scalp. 10 minutes later, firefighters cut us out. We were hanging in there upside down, banged up but alive, all but Dale. While an officer spoke with Mom, a paramedic bandaged my head. Somewhere behind me, one officer whispered to another that, for the life of him, he couldn't understand how both arms were torn clean off. I looked around and spotted Ellie by the woods. She was sitting on the ground, hugging her knees, peering into the tree lean. I excused myself and walked up behind her. Ellie? She didn't respond. Ellie, listen, I'm older than you. I'm supposed to be someone you can trust. But I misled you, and Mom's alone again. All because of... I paused to stop myself from crying in front of Ellie. Look, just promise me something. Don't blame yourself. If you need someone to blame, blame. A burst of laughter escaped her. Promise you, she said. Ellie stood and turned. The doll was in her hands. Its arms were stitched back on sloppily, like she'd done in a hurry. Here's a promise. Every day, for the rest of your life, I'm going to find a new way to make you suffer. Starting now. Ellie smashed the needle into the doll's eye. A bright flash filled my vision, and every vein in my eye coiled with the most extreme pain I've ever experienced. My legs buckled. I smacked the ground. Footsteps sprinted over, and people shouted all at once. What's wrong? What happened to him? I don't know, Ellie said. He just fell. It's been 2 years now, 730 days. And every single one of those days, Ellie has fulfilled that promise. She's still finding new ways. Story 10. Do not go to the Minnesota starvation experiment site. They are still hungry. I'm writing this from my apartment. And I need you to understand something before I explain what happened. I need you to know that the Minnesota starvation experiment was real. In 1944, at the University of Minnesota, Dr. Keyes conducted what will become one of the most disturbing psychological studies in American history. 36 conscientious objectors, men who refused to fight in World War II, volunteered to be starved. For 6 months, they were fed approximately 1,800 calories per day while performing hard labor. Then, for 3 months of rehabilitation, They were slowly reft. The results were horrifying. The men became obsessed with food, collecting recipes, licking their plates, some even contemplating cannibalism. They experienced severe depression, self-mutilation, and personality changes so profound that several never fully recovered. One man, it's documented, cut off 3 of his own fingers with an axe, though he couldn't remember if it was deliberate or not. The experiment was designed to help understand how to refeed starving populations in post-war Europe. It was conducted in the basement of the University of Minnesota's laboratory, in a nondescript building that still stands today. I know all of this because I'm a demolition consultant. Was a demolition consultant. 3 weeks ago, the university finally approved the teardown of the old laboratory, the building where the experiment took place. Most of it had been abandoned since the 1980s, deemed too outdated and too expensive to renovate. My job was to survey the structure, identify any hazardous materials, and map out the safest way to bring it down. I went in on a Tuesday morning, alone. The building smelled wrong from the moment I entered. Not the usual mildew and rot you get in abandoned buildings. This was sharper, more organic, like the rendering plan I'd surveyed a few years back, but with an undernote of something vinegary and sick. The main floors were standard, with stripped offices, empty labs, and the accumulated dust of decades. My footsteps echoed too much. The architectural plan showed 4 stories, but when I checked the stairwells, I found marking for a sub-basement that wasn't on any of my documentation. Professional curiosity is a liability in my line of work. I should have left it alone. The stairs down were narrow, institutional concrete that had been painted gray years ago. My flashlight caught something on the walls as I descended. Scratches, deep ones, running parallel down the concrete in sets of 5. Like someone had dragged their fingernails down the walls hard enough to gouge the stone. The sub-basement was a long corridor lined with small rooms. Cells, really. Each had a narrow bed frame, a small desk, and a single bare bulb overhead. My documentation said this level had been used for extended observation during various studies. The rooms still had numbers stenciled on the doors, S1 through S36. 36 rooms, 36 subjects. I felt cold despite my jacket. The scratches were everywhere down here, on the door frames, the floors, even the ceilings. In one room, someone had carved words into plaster. Still hungry, still hungry, still hungry, repeated in manic spirals that covered an entire wall. The handwriting degraded as it went, becoming less controlled, more jagged. At the end of the corridor was a heavy steel door with multiple locks. A sign read, long-term observation. Authorized personnel only, Dr. Keys. The locks were already open. I should have left. God, I should have left. The room beyond was large, maybe 40 by 60 feet, with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness above my flashlight's reach. The smell hit me like a fist. That rendering plant smell intensified 100-fold. And underneath it, something else. Something that made my hindbrain scream. There were beds arranged in neat rows. 36 beds. 23 of them were occupied. I need you to understand, I've seen bodies before. Construction site accidents. A few suicides in buildings I've surveyed. I know what a corpse looks like. These weren't corpses. They were moving. Not much. Just a slow rise and fall of breathing. And they were wrong. Even in the dim wash of my flashlight, I could see they were wrong. Skeletal didn't begin to describe it. These were bodies that had consumed themselves, burned through every ounce of fat, and then started on the muscle, leaving nothing but skin stretched over bone and sinew. But they were too long. The proportions were off. Their fingers extended far past where fingers should end, tipped with nails that had grown thick and yellow and curved. Their joints bulged grotesquely, knees and elbows swollen to twice their normal size. And their eyes, when my light swept across the nearest bed, the eyes snapped open. They were huge, occupying nearly half the face, with pupils dilated so wide they looked black. They reflected my flashlight like an animal's. The thing's mouth fell open, and I heard a sound I'll never forget, a wet, desperate clicking, like someone trying to speak through a mouth full of saliva. Its jaw distended too far, and I saw that its teeth had changed, become sharper, more numerous. Then it moved. I've never seen anything accelerate like that. One moment it was lying still. The next it was upright on the bed in a crouch, head cocked at an angle that would snap a normal person's neck. It didn't move smoothly. It twitched into position like a video skipping frames. Every single one of them was awake now. 23 pairs of those massive, hungry eyes fixed on me. I ran. Behind me, I heard them coming, not footsteps, but a horrible skittering sound, like they were moving on all fours, or more than four. I didn't look back. I hit the stairs and took them 3 at a time, my lungs burning, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would burst. Something grabbed my ankle. I fell hard, my chin cracking against concrete steps. Dazed, I looked back. One of them had caught me, its hand, if you could call it that, wrapped completely around my leg, those elongated fingers meeting on the other side. Its face was inches from mine, and I could see every detail in the emergency lighting of the stairwell. It had been a man once. I could see that in the bone structure, in the remnants of humanity still clinging to its features. But starvation had refined it into something else, something that evolution never intended. Its skin was translucent, blue veins visible beneath like a map. Its eyes were desperate, starving, insane. Its mouth opened wider than should be possible, and I saw its throat convulsing, saliva running down its chin in streams. The smell of its breath was indescribable, rot and stomach acid and something chemical. It spoke. Hungry, it whispered, voice like dried leaves. So hungry. I kicked it in the face with my free foot. Something crunched. It didn't let go, but recoiled enough that I could wrench my leg free. I scrambled up the stairs on my hands and knees, then found my feet and ran. I made it to the main floor. The exit was right there, daylight visible through the grimy windows. I was going to make it. Then I saw them again. They were in the hallway ahead, 3 of them blocking the door. They must have known another way up. They moved in that horrible stop-motion way, twitching from spot to spot, their heads moving in sharp, bird-like jerks to track my movement. The one in the middle was wearing the rotted remains of what might have once been a U of M volunteer badge. I could just make out the year, 1945, 78 years. They'd been down there for 78 years. I looked around frantically and saw another stairwell leading up. I bolted for it, hearing that skittering behind me again. Up one flight, then another. I was on the 3rd floor now, running down a corridor of empty offices. There, a window and a fire escape outside. I didn't slow down. I put my arms up and dove through glass. I landed on the fire escape hard enough to see stars, glass embedded in my jacket and hair. Below me, I heard them throwing themselves against a window frame, unable or unwilling to follow. I half climbed, half fell down the fire escape and ran to my truck. I was a mile away before I stopped shaking enough to drive properly. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? I called the university and told them the building was structurally unsound, that we'd need to seal it before demolition could proceed. They said they'd handle it. That was 3 weeks ago. At first, I thought I was fine. Shaken, sure, but fine. I'd had a scare. I'd escaped. It was over. Then I started getting hungry. Not normal hunger. This was something else. I'd eat a full meal, a huge meal, more than I'd normally have, and an hour later, I'd be starving again. Not just peckish. Genuinely, painfully starving, like I hadn't eaten in days. I went to a doctor. She ran tests. Everything came back normal, she said. My metabolism was fine. She suggested it might be psychological. Gave me the number for a therapist. But it's not psychological. I know because I've lost 15 pounds in 3 weeks, despite eating constantly. I know because when I look at my hands, my fingers look longer. Not much, just a little. Just enough that I notice when I'm typing or holding a fork. I know because my joints ache. My knees crack when I stand up, and they feel swollen, hot to the touch. I know because last night I looked in the mirror and my eyes seemed too large in my face. I know because I can't stop thinking about food. Every thought circles back to it. I dream about eating, wake up with my jaw aching from grinding my teeth. I've started collecting recipes obsessively, printed them out and cover my apartment walls with them. When I eat, I catch myself licking my plate. Yesterday, I found myself calculating the caloric content of my neighbor's dog. I know because the hunger isn't in my stomach anymore. It's in my bones and my cells and my DNA. It's rewriting me from the inside out. I drove past a building yesterday. There were university maintenance vehicles outside and workers installing heavy steel panels over all the windows and doors. A new sign read, "Condemned, no entry, dangerous structure." They're sealing it, sealing them in. But it's too late for me. I'm writing this as a warning. The Minnesota starvation experiment didn't end in 1945. It's still going. Those men volunteered to be starved for science, to help humanity. And something in that process changed them into something that shouldn't exist. Maybe it was a duration, starvation for so long that their bodies adapted in impossible ways. Maybe it was something else. Something in that building, in that basement. It doesn't matter now. What matters is that I can feel happening. The changes are accelerating. My fingers are definitely longer today. I had to resize my keyboard at work. My jaw clicks when I chew, like the bones are loosening, preparing to extend. I'm so hungry I can barely think. And eating doesn't help anymore. Nothing helps. Last night, I felt the urge to go back. Back to that building, back to that basement. The hunger calls me there, whispers that relief is waiting in the dark with the others, that I belong there now, that I've always belonged there. I'm trying to resist. I'm trying so hard to resist, but I'm so hungry, and my lease is up next month. I don't think I'm going to renew it. If you're reading this, stay away from the old laboratory at the University of Minnesota campus. Don't go near it. Don't try to investigate. They've sealed it now, but seals can be broken. And whatever you do, if you're ever anywhere near that place and you hear scratching sounds coming from underground, if you smell that rendering plant smell mixed with vinegar and wrongness, run. Because they are still hungry. We are still hungry. And I don't think I can hold out much longer. My fingers are too long to type comfortably anymore. I'm ending this here. There are 36 beds down there. I think one of them was always mine.